Catholic Social Theory by Wilhelm Schwer. Part 1. Society and the Theory of Society. Chapter 1. The Concept of Society. A. Society and its meaning. 1. The word. To designate the forms of men's living together, the two large European linguistic groups, the Romance and the Germanic, have developed various words. In the Romance languages, the expressions are derived from the Latin words societas and communitas, from which comes society, in French, société, in Italian, società, and community, communauté, comunità, and several related terms. The German word Gesellschaft is derived from the word Saal, Old German Saal, Old Saxon Seele. The word Gemeinschaft, from the adjective gemein, common. But the first word soon lost its original meaning. By the early Middle Ages, the word Geselle, companion, signified not merely a member of the household of the nobility, but also a member of a guild or profession, a spouse, a lover and friend, a traveling companion, a companion in the hunt and war, or at feasts. The word society shows a corresponding development and soon designated formations of various sorts. It includes the most transient and casual relationships, for example, touring society, as well as the social organizations which persist through the centuries, such as the state and the church. It is used for casual groups which are often united only through a subconscious mental and spiritual relation, e.g., refined society, Western society, and also for corporations and unions which are strictly organized by law, contract, and rules. The word refers also to the marriage union, a society limited to two persons, as well as to mankind, embracing not only the present generation, but also past and future generations. The most superficial and unimportant relations are termed societies, as well as the fundamental pillars of all social order and morals, the family and the state. It includes forms of society which are based upon natural impulses and instincts, upon descent and kinship, upon harmony and affection, as well as others which are created by calculation and deliberation. Until the beginning of the 16th century, the history of the word society shows a continual expansion of its original meaning, which was limited to smaller social and professional communities. In the 18th century, with its ideals of enlightenment, humanitarianism, and cosmopolitanism, the word reached its greatest extension. The following period again restricted the term to smaller groups, formed by birth, refinement, or property. Good society, high society. 2. The nature of society. The nature of social processes and social structures remains, however, untouched by all these changes. Every social relation is a psychological process. Society is a mental and spiritual fact. To live together merely in space, even in the closest form, and to belong together with other individuals to the same period, never causes a social relationship. Nor is such a relation formed by a contemporary influence from the outside or the unison of individual thoughts and interests toward a common external purpose. Society needs a mutual psychological relationship, the members' awareness of one another and of their relation to one another, a spiritual unison. Society is a group of persons who are subjects of psychological interactions between the single members. If men join together socially, psychological processes, which originally are individual and separate, unite into a homogeneous common consciousness. As the amount of such psychological processes of the individual is inexhaustible, a person can enter at the same time into various social relationships. His social inheritance and capacity are multipolar. Human society, considered as a whole, appears as a kind of wickerwork, not of a physical nature like a coral branch, but of a mental nature, a texture of thoughts, sensations, moods, and desires. Later, we will consider whether this mental influence includes the entire human being and whether the nature of society is rightly interpreted if it is regarded as such a totality of mental interrelations. 3. The origin. We must now consider the development of this psychological contact and relation of separate individuals who are themselves units. Evidently, the development did not take place through direct contact of the minds themselves, although the possibility of such an intuitive understanding of another's mind has been often maintained. But one person's thoughts, feelings, and inclinations, which may be considered fundamental elements, cannot reach the soul of another in a direct manner. Such a communication is effected only through the intermediary of a perceptible instrument, by which one person communicates to others the contents of his consciousness. The other person receives the communication by similar means into his inner world, that is, he understands them. These means of understanding, symbols which form society, in which the mind expresses itself physically, are divided by Schwer into personal and material means. Of the personal kind are looks, facial expression, gesture, sounds, especially language. Of the material kind are writing, pictures, monuments of art, and culture. These monuments, mute witnesses of the mind and life of remote generations, are able to unite generations and nations over long periods into a social unity, because they represent the thoughts of ages. Just as a man's individual existence cannot be separated from the physical foundation upon which it is based, so his social existence depends upon the intermediary of agents belonging to the visible world. Thus we see that the being and form of social life are largely determined by these material factors. On the other hand, an individual loses his contact with society and becomes solitary and unsocial the more the activity of his senses, sight, hearing, speech, diminishes. B. The conception of society and its changes. Linguistic practice at first, and sociological theory afterward, have separated from the multitude of separate formations, which are designated by the general term society, certain kinds of social processes. To these it applies the term society in a more limited sense with regard to its extent and its contents. 1. Society is a social union. As a consequence of the living together of human beings, numerous social relations develop at almost every moment, and disappear as quickly as they came. They are the filigree, the finest and loosest connections in the tissue of human relations. Other relations consolidate into something more permanent, and form a union which lasts beyond the moment of their formation. Those of the first type arise and disappear, the other ones last. The first ones develop and decline along with the superficial interest that created them. The others direct the social wills toward a common purpose which unites those wills as long as the purpose remains in force. In the first case, the momentary desire or mood of the individual destroys the transitory social structure. In the second case, a deliberate will, which develops above the weakness and selfishness of individual desires, deals with those impulses on a basis of authority. In this last case, the closer type of social association or union is derived from society as the general type. By this association or union, the participants enter into a more or less permanent connection with one another. Through their common purpose, they are united and molded into a certain hierarchy. The regulation of their mutual dealings that characterizes all social life compared with a merely physical contact soon uses the form of legal ties. These ties become stronger and more varied the more important the social structure becomes for the general life of the community. Only through this formation of social unions and associations does the structure of a social organization develop. 2. Society and the state. The state is a society in this narrower meaning of an enduring, self-sufficient, regulated union. As the ultimate and highest form of a social union, the state embraces all existing cultural and economic organizations. It does not enter their realms directly. Nevertheless, it is so closely interwoven with them that neither antiquity nor the Middle Ages thought of a conflict of interests or a separate summarization or consideration of these powers within the state in regard to any possible antagonism. Only the 18th and 19th century made this distinction by contrasting society as the total of all cultural and economic formations which are within the state, but independent in their own realm, with the state. The great revolutions of that period made this distinction evident to the minds of individuals and nations. The French thinkers Saint-Simon and Auguste Comte were the first to understand and formulate the word society in this new meaning. They made this word the foundation of a new social science, sociology. For the German social sciences, Lorenz von Stein introduced the separation of state and society. The struggle between these two forces, which represent the static and dynamic element in history, is regarded by Stein as the driving force of the great social movement which began in France in the year 1789. 3. Society and community. Another sharp definition and exact interpretation of the conception society as a special type of social structure had been prepared long before its scientific formulation by its linguistic use, especially in German. The German language made a subtle distinction between society and community. Again, it was Lorenz von Stein who pointed out the importance of this distinction, which was introduced into sociological terminology by Ferdinand Teniers. This distinction has influenced modern sociology so strongly that further on a special chapter will be devoted to it.